Just a second. All right. So next up, I want to welcome Shannon Walker, who is on a business trip and just logged in to join us. So thank you for fitting us into your super busy schedule. I tell you, these entrepreneurs, these Artemis members are all over the place. They are traveling, they are facilitating, they are multitasking and making it work. And Shannon, I understand you're in Chicago today. Is that right?
I'm in a little WeWork, or a big WeWork place actually. So yes. So
Okay.
apologize I can't stay for the entire event because I know it'll be amazing, but happy to be here.
That's okay. Yeah, today's theme is the power of stories, and I know you know Susan very well that we
Yes.
just heard from, and we're talking about sort of how we can take the power of stories in the mining industry more broadly, sort of an understanding of where we've been and where we're going to really understand the the changes that we want to make and the ways that our businesses are contributing to those big picture changes. So you are the founder of Whistleblower Solutions. You've been around for almost 20 years, so congratulations on
Yeah.
the longevity and success of your business. It's called Whistleblower Security. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've done and what originally led you to start this business? How did you spot the opportunity and what's some of the impact? Tell us some stories.
Sure. Well, when the opportunity was presented, it actually came through our auditors, our external auditors at the time. And I was working with a publicly traded company, and Sarbanes-Oxley regulations came into play in the US. And one of the caveats within the regulations was to have a confidential reporting system in place. And at the time, we had a contact center, and the auditor said, "This is really interesting. Maybe there's something there." So I started researching what types of services would meet those regulations, and then we built our very first, very cursory, very simple platform to start intaking. And at that time, I would cold call. I actually cold called mining companies, and one of the our external auditors had a friend who was on a board, and that board member, he was on the board of B2 Gold, which I think was my first client and is still my client 20 years later. And that
Wow.
relationship led to other relationships. And the junior market mining companies in Vancouver really they were the foundation of this entire business. And I found it really interesting because they were at the forefront of recognizing that not only they had to fulfill this regulation, both in Canada and the US. Canada came in with the regulation after the US, but they also realized that it was an excellent tool for them to reach out to communities at the different mining sites globally. So we started setting up phone lines. Initially, I just had North America, and then to meet the needs of the mining companies, we started setting up phone lines in Mexico, and then Bolivia, and then Brazil. And it just sort of blossomed from there. But I found it very interesting in what you think was kind of an old school, industry at the time. They were
Mm,
very much on the forefront of embracing Speak Up. And it's
mm.
kind of funny too, because I went down the path of trying to get forestry companies, and they at the time were not interested. And they said, if someone wants to call, they can call our lawyer. And I'm like, really? Is a guy in the sawmill in Williams Lake going to pick up the phone during his shift and call the lawyer in Vancouver? And is he even going to be at his desk? I mean, it was ridiculous. So I
Mm.
think that as we've seen over the years, it started off as a regulation and they needed to meet that regulation, but it's become embedded, I think, in their governance and in their embracing of how they can do better for the communities around the mining sites. And it's taking on a whole new level of engagement for employees, for communities, for management. So it's been exciting to watch it transition over the years.
I just love how, just as you said, something that came down as a regulation that people were seeing as maybe a box to check or a necessary evil, a hoop they had to jump through, actually became something that started to drive positive change for their workplaces, sort of for those folks on the ground, working on the tools, working on the front lines, with their boots on the ground. And the title of the talk that you and I had sort of spoken about was how your services. So this is a phone number, correct? That people can call
Yep.
anonymously in order to register some kind of observation. Now, this could be something to do with their own personal experience. It could be a complaint. It could be a problem. It could also be a suggestion or something more proactive. Is that right? Like, can you tell us about the range of things that people are picking up the phone to report on
Sure.
through your service?
So it did initially start as a tool to meet a regulation, but over the years, what it has transitioned and evolved into is this all-encompassing accessibility tool for employees to say, hey, I think maybe there's a health and safety issue on site to, I think we're wasting a lot of money doing the things that we're doing right now, the way we're doing them. And this is a process that I want to suggest. And I think because of the level of anonymity and confidentiality that comes through the hotline, people can also they can suggest those types of things that maybe they might be intimidated to suggest or embarrassed to suggest or think that, I don't think anybody will find this valuable, but if they can throw it out there into this sort of nebulous, ethernet kind of thing, then they can share, and they can share without fear of being judged and what have you. And so it's become quite powerful in that sense. And it's not just the hotline. We also have a web intake form. And one of the things I'm doing today, actually here in Chicago, is we're going through a whole AI co-pilot project whereby we're going to be incorporating AI into the online interactions. And so it'll become a much more empathetic and I guess like actually the AI is going to be informed by previous conversations that we've had with reporters, by the intel that our contact center has. So I'm kind of excited about
Wow.
that evolution of interaction for our tool. But definitely it's become a tool that kind of runs the gamut. So yes, it can do fraud, it can do ethics, it can do health and safety, but it can do process flow. It can do opportunities for improvements in the way that the operations are run. So it's become I think a very important tool. And I think one of the talks that we had previously, and Susan was part of that, was how these types of tools, it can build the psychological safety in a site, which leads to, like, I think another speaker had a great quote, which you can't have physical safety without psychological safety. And I feel that the
Mhm.
whistleblower tool is so much about the support that goes around building that psychological safety. And I think too, oftentimes we've heard from reporters where they just call in to say thank you for having this system in place, because it shows that
Mhm.
management really cares and wants to hear from them. And it is not, I'm pretty passionate about the fact that we engage with clients who are committed to this. We don't want to work with people who are just checking a box.
Yeah.
And when clients or prospects have told us, we're just doing this for the due diligence, and then we're not actually going to launch it, we actually choose not to engage with them, because we don't want to be attached to clients who aren't really true about engaging with their employees and their community stakeholders.
That's fantastic. And no doubt that having the infrastructure in place, having the hotline hooked up, with your team under contract and your solutions in place is only the first step. What happens when they get the data back, right? When they get the data from you, tell us a little bit about some of the changes maybe you've seen or some of the impacts that you've seen from companies that take action on the information that the whistleblower solution brings to them.
Well, and it's a really good point. I think it's one of the most important things is that you get these data points in, and then you have to action them. And so one of the things that we always counsel, the first thing we counsel our clients on is, when you get a report, the most important thing to do immediately is to acknowledge receipt of the report, because reporters want to be heard. If they're calling, if they're going online to report, it takes us a lot of courage to put yourself
Yeah.
out there. I was just in New York yesterday, and I was speaking at a conference with a whistleblower who was actually awarded $78 million for the fraud that he uncovered through the SEC down in the US. And
Wow.
they had another whistleblower there as well from another financial institution who was persecuted and ended up being exited out of her job because she blew the whistle. So it's this important distinction of ensuring that, if you are going to put a system in place, you need to have anti-retaliation policies in place, and you need to also be committed to those. Because again, I feel like part of our job is to protect the whistleblower and empower them and ensure that if they're brave enough to come forward, that they are not ostracized, that they are not demoted, that they don't lose their jobs. And so those are some interesting aspects of this whole world of whistleblowing. I think back in the day when I started, there was still the negative connotations around being a whistleblower, and maybe even still today, it's are you ratting out someone? Are you snitching on
Hmm.
someone? Which I think is so unfortunate because I think whistleblowers should be celebrated. And the types of things that I've seen in the mining industry that have come out of whistleblowing reports are certainly fixes to safety issues on site, identifying substance abuse issues on site, where you actually have people who are delivering other products for the mining site are also delivering drugs to the mining site. So
Wow.
those are some really tangible things, and certainly procurement fraud is one of them. But some of the more positive outcomes are the policy changes that happen based on the data points that our clients get. And certainly there is other, negative outcomes, with people being terminated, but those are actually, and when you look at it, positive outcomes, because you want to get rid of, toxic employees who are committing fraud. Um, and then, action on resolution and remediation on any of the reports that you're getting. So though I think one of the most important things too is to be able to close the loop. And within our software, there's sort of a guided path where you review, you investigate, you close, and then you record the outcomes. So is it a policy change? Is it a termination? Is it a process change? Those types of things are very important, and very important for the board to be able to see how many reports did you get? Were they validated? And then what were the outcomes? And so that it gives great credibility and legitimacy to having these tools in place when you see the positive outcomes that affect the companies that use this.
Yeah, fantastic, Shannon. Thank you for those examples. It really brings to life the changes that you're making. It's not just about the software or having the phone lines in place, it's about that culture change and that willingness to be transparent, to be committed to our values, to have them not just be, honesty, integrity, as these
Yeah.
value statements on the wall, that sort of sit there, and then all manner of things are actually happening, but to seek alignment with those things. And I know from looking at your website and some of your materials, you talk about integrity and how people on site want to see that, they want the right things to be happening. Most people really want to be doing good and on the side of productivity and honesty and the betterment of the company overall. So you're enabling that for them, and also giving such great insights to not only mine leadership, but also the board, right? To understand what is actually going on within our company and how can we make it better.
No, exactly. And I mean, the board has fiduciary responsibilities. And so obviously they want to know what's going on in remote locations all over the world. And this tool allows them to have that kind of connection that they wouldn't normally have. And the tool itself, the platform is called Integrity Counts. And that is, again, to speak to the employees and the community stakeholders that the company is committed to integrity within the workforce and into protecting the employees who are, working for them and taking great risks working in mines.
Yeah, beautiful. Shannon, thank you so much for your time. This has been so great to get a little window into your world and the fantastic impact that you're creating. We'll let you go on with your busy day, but if anyone wants to get in touch with Shannon and her team to learn more about their solutions, we'll make sure that you have her contact information, and we definitely encourage you to reach out.
Okay, great. Thanks so much and have a lovely afternoon. Take
Thank you,
care.
Shannon.
Okay,
You
bye
too.
bye.